Here we go, everybody. College Football Payoff Podcast, episode 15. We are into bowl season, and today's podcast we are doing over Zoom. We're both away from each other for this episode, spending time with family for the holidays. So we decided to knock this out over Zoom and give you guys all of our picks for every single game for the first half of bowl season. So bear with us on the audio. It was our first try with the Zoom, but I think it turned out pretty well. We gave you guys a bunch of nuggets there, and hopefully we gave you guys a bunch of winners as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow us wherever you can, and share it with everybody. Hopefully, you enjoy this episode, and next week we will be back in studio, so we'll have a little clearer show for you. But without further ado, here we are, episode 15, our first half bowl season picks. Enjoy.
All right, well, I'm going to kick it off with the Montgomery Bowl, hosted in Montgomery, Alabama. Kickoff December 23rd, 7 p.m. Right now, Memphis is laying 8 points against Florida Atlantic University. Over-unders at 49.5. So far this year, Memphis is 7-3 with their record, but they have been overvalued in Vegas as they're 3-7 against the spread. We look at the other side of the ball, FAU, they're 5-3 on the year, 3-5 against the spread. So two teams that we haven't really been able to rely on too well this year. But honestly, I'm going to have to roll with Memphis laying the points here. Their quarterback, Brady White, has over 3,000 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions this year. Memphis has been moving the ball and scoring really well this year, averaging over 31.6 points. And like I said, Brady White has averaged over 300 yards passing per game. The problem with this team is that they've been allowing over 300 yards rushing a game this year. So Memphis has had one of the worst defenses in the league. They're currently ranked 116th in the rush defense this year, which out of the 120 FBS teams, that's not really something that we look to bet on. And then we have FAU on the other side of the ball, whose defense has been actually performing really well. They only allow 326 yards a game, but they've only been averaging 20 points a game. So although their defense has been holding it down for them, we see a lot of tendencies with FAU that we do with one of the favorite teams we like to bet here, Marshall, as having a lackluster offense and then having to have their defense save them all year. I really think that Memphis is probably going to win this game. 8 points seems just enough for me. Florida Atlantic hasn't been too impressive to me over the last couple of weeks. They've dropped back-to-back games against Southern Mississippi, 45-31. And then on December 5th, they lost to Georgia Southern 20-3. Meanwhile, although Memphis lost to a pretty good Tulane team, they have put it on and won 4 out of the last 5, beating USF, SF Austin, Navy, and Houston. I'm going to roll with -8. Memphis Tigers -8 here.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Memphis, you mentioned beating Houston, Navy. I just think they're, a couple extra games is going to do them well for this game. And, I just, when I look at FAU, I don't see them being able to put up many points in this one. So we'll go collective pod pick, Memphis -8.5.
Unity on the pod. Yeah, back to Nick Tronti, quarterback for FAU, has a 5-2 touchdown interception ratio this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's all right. There you go. So we got Memphis FAU. So we'll talk about this next one, the second game on the 23rd, the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. It's Louisiana Tech versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is 6.5-point favorite, over/under set at 48.5. And I mean, this game, both teams are just coming off horrendous ends to their regular season. Louisiana Tech was just steamrolled by TCU in their finale. They lost 52-10. And Georgia Southern blew a lead, gave up 27 second-half points. And it was just a meltdown against Appalachian State. They ended up losing that 27-26 at home. So long story short here, neither team really has momentum going into this game, and both teams have issues on both sides of the ball. Starting with Louisiana Tech, they do have pretty good history in this bowl. They blew out Arkansas State, but that was like 5 years ago. The recent history is what could play a factor. After getting destroyed in their last game, they're hoping that maybe a little extra prep time is going to work for the mental and physical recovery, but it's not going to help recover their defense. They're giving up over 425 yards per game and close to 200 on the ground. It's not going to do them very well when they have to face the nation's fifth-ranked rushing attack, and that belongs to Georgia Southern. They're running for over 260 yards a game, and they also control the clock very well with the use of that ground game. But Georgia Southern is missing a lot on the offensive side of the ball. And their offense actually has been pretty one-dimensional all season, just running the ball. But the injury report for the Eagles includes both quarterbacks, Shea Wirtz and Justin Tomlin. I know Tomlin's out. Wirtz might play. I know he's questionable. And then their two running backs, J.D. King and Wesley Kennedy III. So there's four top offensive players right there on an injury report. It's looking like this is going to be pretty sloppy, but a game that's going to stay on the ground, especially when Georgia Southern has the ball. And Louisiana Tech has possibly one of the worst offenses in the country. They only have 325 yards per game, which is 113th in the nation. I don't think there's going to be many points scored by Tech, and Georgia Southern's going to control the clock with, like we said, the heavy dose of run plays. So we're leaning towards the under. It has hit in 5 of the last 6 non-conference games for Georgia Southern, and the last 6 December games. In Louisiana Tech's last 11 games, following a straight-up loss, the under is 9-2 and is a perfect 4-0 in the last 4 Wednesday games. We got to find any trends we can when picking games like this, but I think the fact that Georgia Southern is going to run the ball probably 90% of the time, it's going to be an under due to basically time of possession. So Louisiana Tech, Georgia Southern, we're going under 48.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I've bet Georgia Southern a couple times this year. Unfortunately, I've taken the over multiple times, and that's been a mistake every single time.
Yeah.
This is an under team. I'm rocking with you on this one.
There we go. All right, what do you got next?
Good. So I'm going to go back to Montgomery, Alabama. 2 days later, we're going to be playing the Camellia Bowl. And no, I will not be naming advertisements on the show, as these bowls are not advertising us. So this game is a Christmas Day kickoff, 2:30 p.m. Marshall versus Buffalo. Buffalo's laying 3.5 points, over under 53.5. So far this year, Marshall 7-2, 5-3 against the spread. Marshall started out 7-0 this year, dropped their last 2 games in horrendous fashion. And over the last 2 weeks, they have not been the same team that we've seen play. On the other side of the ball, UB started out 5-0 against a super weak MAC conference, where they beat Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green, Kent, and Akron. None of those games were really close, but when they finally had to play Ball State, they ended up losing by 10. So we're watching 2 teams that are in disarray here, who've had very different conference championship games than what their season has shown. And honestly, I can't take a side here. Both these teams disappointed me so much last week, as you could have heard in the conference championship week pod, that a side is not the way to go here. We look at Marshall's defense, who's allowing 88.9 yards per game on the ground this year. That is outstanding. Against a Buffalo offense who averages 309.2 yards on the ground this year per game. There's only one way I can look here, and that's the under. Grant Wells, freshman quarterback from Marshall, we've talked about him a lot this year. I really loved his game through the first 7 weeks of the year. But through the first 7 weeks, he was 16 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, 16-4 touchdown-interception ratio. In the second to last game of the year, he ended up almost doubling his interception count, or he did double it. So now he's sitting at 18 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And he started the conference championship last week with 10 straight incompletions. I mean, further my point, we just don't know what this freshman quarterback is going to play like this year, or at least this game. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's been trending ridiculously down, and Brendan Knox got pretty banged up. He wasn't really able to do much against Rice as he rushed for less than 50 yards. But we know on the other side of the ball we got Jarrett Patterson, who we saw score, 7 touchdowns in the game this year?
Eight touchdowns.
Yeah, exactly. So he's at over 1,000-yard mark through 6 games this year. We can expect this game to be a rushing duel between Knox and Patterson, given the under 53.5.
Yep. I mean, and we watched that MAC championship game last week. Patterson was a non-factor too. I mean, he didn't do much for that team, but I think Marshall, like you said, the past 2 weeks, they haven't done anything on offense. And from being this highly, like everyone's really excited about him, to now you're kind of wondering who is Marshall. I like the under pick here.
Yeah.
Like you said, I can't pick a side. If I did, I would probably take Buffalo. But what are they, 4.5? Even that.
3. Yeah.
Is it 3.5?
I can't take. Yeah, I'm looking at 3.5 right now.
I'm still staying.
I can get you 3.5.
Yeah, I'd still stay away from it. I'd play the under.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Let's see. So that was a Christmas Day bowl you had? Well, how about Christmas Eve, the New Mexico Bowl? This is Hawaii against Houston. Houston is 11.5-point favorites. Over under set at 59.5. This is 3:30 on Christmas Eve. And so I did all my research for this. And before we started recording, I saw on Twitter that Houston is actually going to be down 22 extra players for this game. And it's not because of COVID.
It's because of Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah, they did not pass their classes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a West Virginia fan my whole life, and we said a lot on this pod. So I've been very familiar with Dana Holgorsen as a coach. Simply just does not keep his players accountable. Pretty bad team to bet on.
Well, in college right now, because of COVID, a lot of schools and a lot of these classes went from a grading system to just a regular pass-fail.
Exactly. So how bad of a leader do you have to be to not have these kids pass the classes?
They literally just have to show up.
Yes.
And
they have to log into a Zoom link, just like we are right now.
So Houston's already down. And, I mean, I was going against Houston in this one already based on the fact that they've just looked underwhelming all season. Mm-hmm. And this kind of proves it, that's the reason they looked underwhelming, is because he has no control over his players. They don't want to be there. They should not be a double-digit favorite to a team that has a true dual-threat quarterback. Houston, they've been blown out by BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati. And I get it that those are 3 really good teams, but they were all supposed to be close games. Houston was a 3-point underdog in each one, I think. Cincinnati might have been a little more, but 3 points, people are expecting it to be a close game, and they got just demolished. Also, Houston's played 1 football game since November 15th. I think there's a difference when we talk about rust and rest. This is rust, okay? Yes. 1 game in 6 weeks, that's not good for a football team, especially a football team that has not played good defensively this year. The Cougars have allowed over 30 points in 5 of their 7 games on the season, and they're ranked 91st in the nation in points allowed. Houston does have an explosive offense, and Hawaii does give up, on average, 29, close to 30 points a game. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that Houston has only played football 1 time against another team in the last 6 weeks is going to have them shaking off rust probably well into the second half of this game. Whereas Hawaii, they're not going to be shaking off rust. They're going to be really excited and ready to go to play on Christmas Eve, because Hawaii's players didn't even think they were going to be playing in a bowl game this season.
Exactly, yes.
And now they're going to be treating this like it's a national championship. And I think their quarterback, Chavon Cordero, he's going to have a good game in the first half. He's going to keep the game close all the way to the end. Originally, I thought Houston they're a good football. They'll figure it out late, maybe pull out a win because they have more playmakers. But now, that they're not going to have a good chunk of their team, and they've only played one game in over 35 days. I don't know if they'll win, but it just makes my case for my pick even stronger. I'm going Hawaii plus 11.5 to cover in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you on that. I think that's the only way I can look.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how you're getting ready for a bowl game and you can't have kids going to class. Like, it's simple going to class, but
I mean, I'm not going to put my faith in Dan Hogerson one way or another. So I think, if these kids can't focus in class, how are they going to focus on the island?
exactly. Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
All
all
right.
right. I'm taking it to the third bowl game of the bowl season here. First Responders Bowl, Dallas, Texas, December 26th, 3:30 p.m. kickoff. Louisiana is playing UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. Louisiana's laying 14 points here, over under 57.5. Now, we all know Louisiana has dominated the Sun Belt Conference, pretty much every team they've played this year outside of Coastal Carolina. So, yeah, Louisiana 9-1 this year, 5-5 against the spread. UTSA 7-4, 6-5 against the spread. UTSA's had one of the best programs they've had in a long time this year. They're averaging 28.6 points per game, over 400 yards of offense production, and they actually have a real team. Their quarterback Frank Harris has gone for 1,422 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions through the second half of the season, as he has not been their starter year round. But on the other side of the ball, or on the other side of the field, Louisiana has a dark horse quarterback in Levi Lewis. He's a dual threat quarterback with 2,128 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions this year. And he's been the main factor that has led the Louisiana offense to average 34 points per game. Now, on the other side of the ball for Louisiana, they're led by a senior-led defense with 7 starters that are seniors. So Louisiana's been hot over the last 5 weeks as they have played teams like Appalachian State, edging them out by 3 points, beating a high-productive USA offense 38-10, and another high-productive offense in Arkansas State 27-20. But the real game that I see here as a real comparable between Louisiana and UTSA is Louisiana's game against Texas State. This is a high-powered offense ran by Jake Spavital at Texas State that shows a lot of similarities to the UTSA Roadrunners. In that game, Louisiana did score 44 points, but they allowed 34 points. Now, with Texas State's offense being so similar to UTSA's, and Louisiana giving up 34 points to them, I got to look towards the over 57.5 here. I think this total could get definitely over into the 70s. I think this is a little low because, knowing how lethal Louisiana's offense can be. I mean, against bad defenses, they put up points. I mean, against Monroe ULM earlier this year, they beat them by 50 after putting up 70. They still allowed 20. So I'm looking at a lot of totals and box scores. Every team that Louisiana's played this year that hasn't had a good defense, they've exceeded this number of 57.5. I think it's an easy look for me. Give me the over 57.5.
Very good. Yes, I like it. You hit everything. So I was going to actually – one of my games that I was going to talk about was the Gasparilla Bowl, South Carolina UAB. That actually was just canceled. So how about we move on to the team that Louisiana was supposed to play for the Sun Belt, Coastal Carolina. They're playing in the Cure Bowl on December 26th at noon against Liberty. This game, if you remember, was supposed to be played back when Coastal ended up beating BYU. Liberty had to drop off for COVID. So we do get this game, and it was highly anticipated. This was the one that College Game Day was there for, remember? So Coastal is going to open. They're a 7-point favorite. Over-under is at 59. Now, this could be, and I think probably will be, the best bowl game out of all bowl games this season.
Oh, yeah.
We're finally getting that matchup that was, like we said, it was scrapped earlier in the year, but it was much anticipated. And if you remember, that game gave us probably one of the best games of the season, Coastal and BYU. So now we look at it and we have Hugh Freeze, possibly most likely is going to be coaching his last game at Liberty. I'm pretty sure he'll find a Power 5 coaching job somewhere next year, I would assume, the way that he's put Liberty on the map. He has a top 10 rushing offense to face at Coastal Carolina. That team, all right, so Coastal shares the nation's longest winning streak with Alabama.
Yes.
So the longest winning streak in the nation is 12 games, and that's Coastal and Alabama. So this was the first unbeaten regular season for Coastal in school history, and they continued to grow a list of firsts. They had their first 2 top 25 wins, their first Sun Belt, I guess you would call it. They won the championship in the Sun Belt, even though they didn't win the conference championship. And they're going to their first bowl game. Coastal's also going to be bringing a top rushing attack into this game, top 15 in the country, in fact. Not to mention that Coastal is also top 10 in time of possession. So I think the way I'm talking there, you know where I'm going to go with this pick. But if you want a few more tidbits before I give the pick, I'd be happy to share them. Each team may be explosive on offense, but what are we going to talk about with their defense? Are both teams giving up less than 20 points a game? Does 20 plus 20 equal 40? Is 40 less than 59, which is the total? Yeah, see? Defense wins championships. I like math, in case you didn't know. Defense wins championships. We've heard that all of our life growing up playing football. And this game's going to be defensive. Both teams like to run the ball. Liberty gives up 19.2 points a game. Coastal gives up 16.8 points per game. In Liberty's last 4 games against Sun Belt teams, the under's 4-0. The under is 6-1 in Coastal's last 7 versus a team with a winning record. And if you really want to dig in and get investigative here, that game that these two teams were supposed to play that got canceled had a total of 57, and I was still going to take the under in it. Coastal has not given up more than 28 all season. Liberty has not given up less than 24 points in 7 of their 10 games. 28 plus 24 equals 52. That's under 59. So we're going to play the under 59 here.
I like it. I'm not going to give out an official pick on this one, but I remember a couple weeks ago when these teams were matched up, line opened at Coastal -7, moved up to Coastal -10, and I was on Liberty in that game. I think that cause kind of helps your pick here. So I'm going to rock, or I'm not going to give it out, but I like the pick.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun. Like I said, I think it'll probably be the best bowl game. And what is that, the day after? Or is that the day before? No, it's the day after Christmas. Love it. Saturday.
What time's that kick off?
That is kicking off at noon.
Oh, nice. All right, I'm going to take it down to Mobile, Alabama for the Lending Tree Bowl. I will give the advertisement on that one. December 26th, 3:30 p.m. kickoff. West Kentucky is going to be playing Georgia State. Georgia State's laying 3.5 points, over under 51. So far this year, Western Kentucky is 5-6, 4-7 against the spread, but they have won their last 3 games. While Georgia State's been a 5-4 team in a pretty competitive Sun Belt conference this year, they have also been undervalued by Vegas, as Georgia State is 6-3 against the spread. So when looking at this game, if you've been listening to this podcast throughout the year, I've labeled Western Kentucky as a pretty big fade team. Through the first 7 games of the year, their quarterback, Tyrell Pagrom, led them in passing and rushing. As you know, we're not fans of betting teams like that. And Tyrell Pagrom, through 11 games, only has 1,423 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's resulted in the Hilltoppers only scoring 18.8 points per game and averaging less than 300 yards of offensive production per game. Going into the postseason and not seeing much improved, although they have won the last 3 games, their offense has not improved much, as they've played some pretty bad defenses along the way. So over the last 3 games that they've won, they've played a terrible Charlotte defense, terrible FIU defense, and they were only able to manage to beat University of Southern Mississippi by 3 points, 10-7. So they have really been relying on their defense to hold it down for them to win over this stretch. And Georgia State, on the other side of the ball, averages over 400 yards of offense production a game. They're averaging right now 227 yards to the ground and almost 200 yards rushing per game. So they have threats on, any which way they want to attack this Hilltopper defense. And I honestly just don't think Tyler Pogrom is going to be able to get it done. Over the last couple of weeks, although they have been winning, they've only averaged less than 350 yards in each of those wins. That's just not much improvement. And then on the other side of the ball, with Georgia State, they have a running back named Destin Coase. He's only gotten going in the last half of this year. He was on the bench and playing second string for the first couple of weeks. Through the last 5 games, he has 652 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. You can see me relying on him this week, and their quarterback Cornelius Brown IV. He's got over 2,000 passing yards in a run-heavy defense through 9 games. You can catch me with Georgia State minus 3.5 this week.
Yep, we're fade Western Kentucky, so
I'm not a Tyrell Pogrom fan. I've been fading him all year, and I'm not going to start taking him now. So let's go with Georgia State.
I like it. All right, let's go. How about the first bowl game between ranked opponents?
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, we got the Cheez-It Bowl. Oklahoma State, Miami, Florida. This is, December 29th, 5:30 kickoff. So we got number 21, Oklahoma State, number 18, Miami. Both of these teams, I would say they had pretty high expectations coming into the year. Oklahoma State I thought they looked poised to make a run at the Big 12 title. And Miami I thought was one of the top teams in the country early on. The big story in this one is going to be that Chuba Hubbard, as we know, will not be playing. And this is going to be a battle between 2 quarterbacks who finished their regular season on high notes and are pretty damn good. Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State, he's battled injuries this year, but he had himself a game when they beat their last game. They beat Baylor 42-3.
Yes.
Sanders threw for 347 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he picked on a favorite target in that game, wide receiver Dylan Stoner. 8 catches, 247 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So take Dylan Stoner out of the equation, Sanders threw for 100 yards, and that's it. So I think they got a little chemistry going there. Could be fun to watch. But on the other side of the ball, you got Miami, who their last game at home, they got mollywopped by North Carolina. They lost 62-26, and that's at home. It's ridiculous. I think that game had, close to 800 yards of offense for North Carolina?
Yeah, I remember watching that.
Stupid. But despite that terrible score, terrible performance, quarterback Derek King had another solid performance. He threw for 250 and 2. He also had a pretty solid target in that game with his tight end, Brevin Jordan. He had 6 catches for 140 and a TD. Both quarterbacks had solid endings to the regular season, and I think that both quarterbacks are going to come ready to dazzle in this one. But I want to look at a few things, mainly how Miami has struggled on defense in their last game, given up over 60 points, 800 yards of offense, easily the worst performance on the season. But in their 10 games, they've given up more than 25 points in 5 of those games. And in 4 of those 5, they've given up 35 or more. So 8-2 record, 2 losses being North Carolina and Clemson. But they've put up 34 points a game on the season with 4 games, putting up more than 45 points. So there's a lot of variations with high points scored, high points given up for them. So we know their offense is pretty good, but their defense is kind of sus. But let's look at Oklahoma State now. We talked about the last game. They won 42-3 against Baylor. That gives them 4 games where they scored 40-plus points. They've given up 40-plus points in 3 games this year. So, again, another team that scores a lot, gives up a lot. I think you're kind of understanding what I'm talking about here and where my pick's going to go. But King has shown that he can perform against top defenses. But I think Spencer Sanders against a poor Miami secondary is going to be the biggest mismatch here. either way, I can't pick. I really don't want to pick a side. Both teams are going to throw the ball. Both teams are capable of scoring and giving up a lot of points. When you throw the ball a lot, there could be turnovers, but there's also the threat of the home run ball. So it's very tough to pick a side. And throwing also helps the clock on the over because incomplete passes, going out of bounds, things like that, you're going to have a lot more plays. So I think in this one, I'm going to go over 58.5.
Yeah. That's the way to get your research backs it up.
Yes, sir. All right, so that's it for me because of South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah. Well, you got one more, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap us up with the Alamo Bowl.
Okay.
Which is taking place at not the home of the real Alamo, but where the Alamo is located in San Antonio, Texas. December 29th kickoff, 9 p.m. at night will be the start time. A lot can change between when this pod is recorded and when the kickoff. So I would take this line now at Colorado plus 11.5. So far this year, Texas is 6-3. They were not, in fact, back. Tom Herman has proven to be a fraud. As they're 3-5-1 against the spread this year, and I don't really see anything changing going into this final game. Now I know that Texas AD came out and said Tom Herman is our guy. We're going to stay with him going forward for the next couple of years as our head coach. I think that's a big mistake, and I think that's going to run a lot of players away from playing for Texas for the next couple of years. On the other side, we have Colorado with the first-year head coach already going 4-1 through 5 games and being 4-1 against the spread. Man, I can't go with Texas here. I got to go with Colorado, who's been undervalued by Vegas all year. And then there's one key player in this game that's going to stick out and win this game for us. And no, it's not Sam Ehlinger. Although the quarterback is 2,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, he's not the key factor that I'm looking for in this game. I'm looking at Colorado's Jarek Broussard. Through 5 games this year, Jarek Broussard has 813 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, I know the touchdowns aren't all there, but 813 yards through 3 games shows that they are going to be hitting the ground running. Texas has no impressive win over the last 5 games as they've edged out Baylor by 11. Baylor's terrible this year. It took them overtime to beat an overrated Oklahoma State team. They had the refs save them against West Virginia when they won by 4. They lost to Iowa State, and they beat a failing Kansas State team. I'm not too sold on them. We can look at the other side of the ball where Colorado has beaten a solid UCLA offense and a pretty good Stanford team. They did lose to Utah, but I think this is pretty easy for me. I can't see a team. I can't take a team with as bad of a defense as Texas has laying double digits on the road. I'm going to go with Colorado plus the 11.5.
Yeah, I'm never going to take – I won't take Texas.
I'm so done with Tom Herman.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be I'm going to, in the offseason, find every reason to be fade Texas next year.
Yeah, wherever Tom Herman is, I'm fading him. I can't stand him. All right. Well, that's it. That's half of them. There's supposed to be 10, but we have 9. So I'll go over what we have on the card. So, again, this is, we both did the research, but we're going to do this as a collective podcast picks. So we'll keep our record as a show, not just individually. We got Memphis minus 8.5. The under 48.5. Louisiana Tech, Georgia Southern. The under 53.5. Marshall Buffalo. Hawaii plus 11.5. Over 57.5. Louisiana UTSA. Under 59 in Liberty Coastal. Georgia State minus 3.5. The over 58.5. Oklahoma State Miami. And Colorado plus 11.5. There's the first half, I guess you would say, of bowl picks. Our next show is going to be huge, man. It's 15 games.
Yes.
It's 15 games.
Very long episode.
Yep, and it's going to be including the 2 playoff games that I'm sure it's going to be a long episode because we're going to put a lot of time into those 2 playoff games. But, again, every single game gets a pick. We're going to go ahead and post our picks because from now on, every day we have a bowl game. So We're going to tweet out the picks that we have, just kind of remind you guys. You're going to see that from the podcast Twitter, which is at CF Payoff Pod. You can also follow me at Accountant Bets. Follow Big Country at Big Country Bets. And be sure to like, subscribe, comment,
rate, review, and most of all, share.
All right, we're on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Amazon. Share it with everybody, all right? Drop us a comment, like, subscribe. You know the deal, but we will send out all our picks each morning. We'll go ahead and let you know what we have and enjoy bowl season, right?
Yes, happy bowl season, happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to everybody. That's it for us. You got anything else?
I'm good.
All right, cool. Like you said, happy holidays, happy bowl season, and happy betting.